meaning whatever denouement means in English. This is a rare foray of mine into investigative journalism, and one that will surely change the tone and the raspiness of our discourse forevermore. As expected, most of the major national news magazines, Time, Newsweek, Redbook, refused the piece out of hand, hiding their understandable but still cowardly apprehension behind such terms as ridiculous and incomprehensible. If not for the brave gentleman at Wasted Times magazine, who recognized its importance and compliance with redeeming social content statutes, this piece may have forever been consigned to the dustpan of history. That it hasn't yet touched off an unprecedented public outcry may only have something to do with the fact that the periodical's general demographic is almost strictly enthusiasts of cheap, over-the-counter inhalants. I am pleased to present a long excerpt from this article entitled "Camelot Deflated, The Truth About JFK, Warning, No Drug Content," from the late December or something issue from 2003. If you are among the too careful readers of the magazine, you may notice that a few passages herein did not appear in the original published piece. You may chalk that up to the needs of the marketplace. The original was trimmed somewhat when an important photo spread of a half-open can of Carbona was added at the last minute. My contact took a protracted drag from his Moncrief 100 and exhaled a nimbus of smoke symbolic of the smokescreen thrown up by our so-called figures of authority for the last 4 decades. He coughed, which I believe represented the collective bronchial spasm suffered by the body politic from the aforementioned suppression, but I'll have to check that later. "You understand," he whispered, "that I'm risking life and limb by telling you all this. If my identity were to be leaked out, I'd be good as dead. You know that, of course, do you?" Of course, I bellowed, so as to be heard over the noise, aka the obfuscation of the truth, in the smoky out-of-the-way bar, aka the national psyche, we were in. "Your identity is safe with me. The world will never hear the name of Andrew Philpott." Oh, not your real name. Good, he leaned in. "The assassination of JFK was neither a coup, nor a conspiracy, nor a means to prolong the Vietnam War. But that doesn't mean there wasn't a cover-up. A big one." "Go on," I urged him, journalistically. "There was no shooter on the grassy knoll. No sniper on the overpass. Lee Harvey Oswald was indeed the sole gunman in the president's murder. So the Warren Commission was right. Or was it the Hughes Convention? My memory isn't what it used to be. Which was the one that did rock the boat?" "They were only right as far as it went," he continued, underscoring the dramatic thrust of his revelation by punching me in the groin. "They didn't want the public to know what really happened. That the fatal wound was not caused by a bullet. It was caused by a sudden and extreme release of pressure in the president's skull." He paused. "You're going to need to start asking something now so I can interrupt you." "You mean yes. John F. Kennedy died because his freakishly oversized head exploded." "Good Lord," I said. "And you have proof?" "Reams of it." "Excuse me, I do wish you'd stop giggling every time I say ream. "Photostats of confidential records from Cape Cod Hospital in Hyannis, dating back to the 20s, proving that the Kennedy family suffered from a rare genetic malady that makes their heads gradually puff up in size, in some cases as much as 3 inches a year. Sealed documents showing that Rosemary Kennedy's botched lobotomy was actually an experimental attempt to get her head to slowly deflate. Affidavits from 6 different eyewitnesses, all of whom have since died under mysterious circumstances, except for the 5 who are still living, testifying that the balloons at Caroline Kennedy's 3rd birthday party were inflated via a valve in her father's neck. Incontrovertible evidence that JFK's chronic lower back pain was caused by the strain of having to lug a gigantic gas ball around on his shoulders. Unretouched photographs that strongly suggest that the stress of the Cuban Missile Crisis led to the chief executives needing to be carried from room to room by an elaborate network of wires hung from the White House ceiling that were borrowed from the 1961 Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. And that further, they were not returned, leading to the infamous incident a year later where a free-floating 2-story tall deputy dog smothered and possibly molested a group of visiting Asian schoolchildren, forever damaging US-Korean relations from then on. He leaned back in his chair, which was either the seat of knowledge or the unupholstered furniture of veracity. Again, I'll check that later. You have no idea how far this stretches, he said. Or how far it could stretch if you pulled on his hair hard enough. I'm flabbergasted, I said. Flabbergasted. So the so-called magic bullet merely pierced his neck, causing his head to explode like an overfed tick in a hairpin factory? Sure, he said. And this is a trait common to the Kennedys? Most of the men, yes. So that would explain Robert Kennedy's death as well. No. RFK, like his older brother, came to realize that the safest and most enjoyable way to relieve the tension of the expanding gases in his skull was to release them through constant marathon bouts of intercourse. Unlike his brother, however, he was more or less monogamous, which, being a good Catholic, meant that he bore many offspring. Unfortunately for his wife, it also meant that repeated ingestion of the gas causes the skin to turn a very unappetizing shade of sepia. And as for the rest of the Kennedy men, well, ask yourself this. Why would one person in a sunken car survive while the other one dies, if not for cranial buoyancy? And JFK Jr., well, do the words cabin pressure mean anything to you? Do you see what I'm saying here? This whole thing is a mystery, wrapped in a riddle, inside an enigma, attached to the back of a big fat head. So what can we do, I asked. What can we do? I'll tell you what we can do. That's good, I said, as that's precisely what I requested just now. We can all go to our legislators and demand that no one be allowed to hold public office if his cabeza is in danger of acting like a piñata. Require all public servants to submit to frequent puncture tests and be jabbed in the neck with tiny needles 4 to 6 times a year. If it doesn't help, it'll at least give the public a good chuckle. And above all, enact mandatory term limits for senators. I am glad that Teddy Kennedy died when he did. One more term of his ever-expanding head. The next session of Congress would have made that scene in Scanners look like a scene from a different movie where somebody's head doesn't blow up. I only pray, he said, that we're not too late. I was speechless. So much so that I couldn't even bid my new acquaintance adieu when 2 of his friends arrived, forced pills down his throat, and helped him into a sleeveless jacket. This was not only a revelation that could conceivably rock the country back on its heels, but also a potential $25 controversy bonus for my editor. And that wasn't all. I learned other equally world-shaking secrets from my contact that night. But those, I'm afraid, will have to wait until Mr. and Mrs. John Q. Public, or indeed anyone else, was ready to hear them. I will say only this. Lincoln's beard, that wasn't facial hair. Well, I thank you for listening so attentively, except for you. I saw what you did. I am going to leave the stage right now. The lights will dim, as will most of your wits, I'm certain. There will be refreshments during the intermission. And then the zit-faced poltroon who was here earlier will return and do more of his bullshit, whatever it is.